Okay, you might have some idea on the Graph API, everyone. So now let's see how we can get the access token and try to get some data from there. So initially, we will see the authentication part. So there are two types of authentication. One is the delegated user-based authentication, and another one is app-only authentication. The delegate user-based authentication means if you log into any of the website like Outlook, Microsoft Azure, so you as a user is trying to log into that website. So that is kind of a delegated user authentication. You perform the login and you enter your credentials and try to log in. And another one is app-only authentication. Here, user intervention is not required. You based on your uh, we can say like application is performing an authentication on behalf of a user. For example, I have built a web application and I want to retrieve some user data, and I can just take the email ID of that user who has logged into my application, and I can perform the authentication on behalf of that user and get the user details. Otherwise, the user can just perform an action on my website and get his user details. That is again delegated permission. So now let's see. Initial app only authentication is the easiest one to implement compared to the user only authentication. So let's see this part. In order to work with the app only authentication, we need to create a application in Azure Active Directory. So let's start that. Maybe somewhere here we might get something. So here you see. So initially we will do register the application in the portal. So let's do that. So we go to Azure Active Directory. We go to app registrations, and here we click on new application, and here we just give any name, let's say Graph Quick Start. And here supported account types. So in this case, if you are developing your application as multi-tenant, that is multiple organization can interact with your application, then you select this. Else, if you are only building your application for your own website, for your own company, then you go with a single tenant. If at all you're building an application for multiple organizations plus personal accounts. Personal accounts here, if you might have heard of @hotmail.com, @outlook.com, those are all comes under the personal Microsoft accounts. So if you're building for them as well, then you select the third option. So let's go ahead and click the multi-tenant. That's the easiest to do. And let's see what else things are required. So app registration, and that is all. So currently redirect URI is not required because we are authenticating from the application, not as a user. If you're authenticating as a user, so once user log into your web application, then they will be redirected to this URL, whatever you specify here. That we are currently not doing. So let's register it. So there are two main important things in order to get the access token. One is the client ID and another one is the client secret that you generate here. So let's generate a client secret. So this is kind of a password for your application. And this is kind of a username for your application. So using this credential, you're trying to get the access token. So let's see. So along with that, your client ID, we also need the tenant ID in order to authenticate. Initially, the basic permissions that are assigned to any application is the user.read. So that's a basic permission that are assigned. And currently it is a delegated permission. So we require the application permission because we are building this application on behalf of user. So here you see Microsoft Graph and here you see two different types, delegated or application. So the signed in user will be getting the access token and interacting with his or her data. That is called the delegated permission. Else, for the application permission, application will run in the background and do all the authentication part and all interact with the data without the signed in user. That's the application permissions. So here here they have changed that to the application. So let's do that. So I'll go to application permission and let's search for user. And user.read all. That means read all users' full profiles. So with this permission, I have access to, basically this application have access to all the user data. So let's add that and let's get rid of this one. Okay. And yeah, so in order to work with the application permissions, API permissions, we require, like, the admin needs to grant the admin consent to this particular application so that it can interact with the Azure Active Directory data. So here not granted for JDBot, that means the admin has not granted permission to this application to work with the data. So if you do not grant, you will not be able to work, basically get any data. So let's grant the permission. And now comes the client secret, that is also done. Let's move to the next part. So this is done. Let's go to the next. So this is all the C# code. So currently we will be only looking at the Postman for now. Okay, app only authentication. Yeah. So this is the endpoint. Okay, this is the default scope. Let's see where is the endpoint. Okay, it is done using the client libraries. And let's see in the official documentation. Let's go back. Yeah, here it is, authentication. And get access on behalf of a user. And get access without a user. So sorry, my bad. We are working with this one. Yeah, so yeah, on behalf of a user, it is the delegated one. I used the wrong term earlier. And this get access without a user, this is the application one. So now let's call this particular endpoint in order to get our access token, where it is, get access token. So let's copy this and put it here. It's a post request. So graph access token. And it requires a tenant ID. We can hard code it or we can create a environment in order to pass my values. So I'll create an environment. And here I'll just add environment variable as tenant ID. And the initial value, let's get it from here. That is users. Oh, that's a client C. Yeah, this is the tenant ID. Okay, and we save this. And when we go back to our post request, here we can access our environment variable using double flower bracket that is starting, that is tenant ID. So this is how you can put like get the data from the environment variable. So make sure the variable is defined. So it is not able to retrieve the value from my environment. In order to do that, you have to go to your collection and somewhere environments on the top right. Yeah. Here you need to choose your environment. So I'll just choose my graph API as the environment. And now here there is no error for the tenant ID. All right. Now let's see what all things are required in the header part. The host we have already given in the endpoint URI. This is my host. That is not required again. The content type, let's add it. And this guy, its value. Okay. Now this four properties are required in order to work with the application. And one is the client ID. And those are again part of the headers. Let's copy all these variables and then we can initialize them with the value. There are two types of grant type. One is the client credentials. That means you have created an application in Azure Active Directory and you're passing its credentials. That is client credential. And one more is the user credential. So that is you are taking the user credentials and then getting its access token. So that's another one that is not secured at all because you had to hard code the username and their password. That is not secured. So this is also not secured, but yeah, we still use the client credentials. In order to make it more secure, we save this data in a, like in terms of, let's say, Azure, we save it in the key vault. That's more secured as of now. And let's see. And we want to now store this, put the values, client ID. Next is the client secret. So since I did not copy, so now I'm not able to view the values. So I have to create a new one. To make sure once you are here, you copy its value because the next time when you come back, it will not be visible to you. So that's client secret. And the grant type is client credentials. The scope is this. All right. So now we have everything that are required to get an access token. So let's run this one. So here we have invalid request. So the request body must contain the following parameters. Then type. Okay, so I think I made a request mistake. So this all are the part of my request body. I guess so. Let's see what's the issue. No, me. The request body must contain the following parameter grant type. Okay, let's put it here. Ah, correct. So you see here, the content type we have given is www form URL encoded. So that will come as the body and here it will come. So let's move them there. And let's get rid of this guys. Let's see if it works. The provided value for scope is not valid. Client credential flow must have a scope value with default suffix to a resource identifier, application ID URI. Okay. And let's see. Let's remove this URL encoded values. And let's try again. And there we have the access token. Now, using this access token, this particular application, the one which we have registered in Azure, can now interact with the data using the Graph APIs, right? So for each of the tasks that you perform using the Graph API, it has its own permission that you need to assign them in the Azure Active Directory application here. So if you're working with Outlook, then you have to give Outlook permission. If working with Teams, you have to give Teams permission. So whatever the cloud services that you want to interact with, you need to get that permission set up here. The best way is, let's say, okay, let's work with users for now. That's the easiest one. And let's see what all permissions are required for the user. Default user permissions. Yeah, this is the documentation that I was looking for. So here you can see all the API endpoints along with their permission required. For example, let's go to user and user. Here you can see under user what all things you can perform. And yeah, I think it's everything here. Let's say create, let's use the get. And here you can see the permissions that are required to work this with this particular endpoint, get user. So here they have mentioned both delegated permission and application permission. So currently we are working with the application permission. So we have already assigned this so that I can read data. If at all I want to modify some data for a particular user, I have to give this permission. And if I want to read everything in the directory, then I can give this permission. Okay, and now let's see. So /me will not work because I'm not working with the delegated permission. I have to use this one, /users. And let's see the main endpoint that we need. Use API. And where is our postman? /users. Okay, that is for the access token. Let me now add a new request. Get user. And let me go to, maybe here only I'll get the details. Yeah, here it is. I'll copy this and put it here. Since it is a get request, nothing is required over here. And now I have to replace this with the user ID that I want to get. I can get the user object ID from the Azure Active Directory. So I'll copy its object ID and put it here. And another thing that is required to authenticate with this one is the access token that we have already received. So let me show you that documentation as well. In the authentication and authorization, get access without a user. Get an access token, that is done. Yeah. So this is the one. So this is the two key value pairs for the headers you need to give in order to work with this one. So you already have an access token. You copy this one and paste it there. And you have to concatenate with this BRL and the token. And next is, yeah, that is all required. So let's see. And here we have the user details, right? So this access token, I guess it is valid only for 1 hour, I guess. That is expires in 35.99. I think that's in seconds. And now let's see for the endpoint. Okay, let me close this one. And now let's see email. That's a good one. List messages. Mail, read, basic, all. Let's give this permission. You search the permission which is there in the documentation here and give that permission. That's the easiest way to do. And now let's grant the admin consent. Now let's see how we can call that. So here, in order to get particular user's mailbox, you just have to use this one. So let's see, I think Arun's mailbox should not be present, but let's see. Let me duplicate this particular request. It's not duplicated. Let me copy this, save. Now it's duplicated. Since this is a post request, I guess so. Let's check. No, it's a get request. And what's the endpoint? /user/ID/messages. Then we have to just put messages here. And let's see. If he has the mailbox, we should get something. I doubt it. He has it. Check credentials and try again. Okay. Let's see for the other user. Okay. Error access denied. I think we are missing some permissions. Let's add, yeah, these two permissions. Read mail.read. And let's read basic mail and mod mailbox sales. Sweet. Okay, let's give this read one. And is my endpoint correct? ID users/ID optional query parameters. Request body is not required. Okay, now let's see. No, still not working. Let's try to get the user details if it is working. Okay, we are getting the user details. Okay, that's fine. Let's pick something else that we can research on that later. Yes. What is the easiest one to pick? Most of them requires a huge amount of permissions. Yeah, this list member of our group. List groups. This is the one this we can pick. and slash group. Let's try to give these permissions. All right, let's try again this guy. So I just want to get the list groups. Let's see if it works. So named version 1 groups. Authorization request denied, insufficient privileges to complete the operation. Okay. Let's see what is the issue. What is missing? So list all groups available in an organization, excluding dynamic. This default from computers requires minor application. The option request meters. Vamos. Here the beacon that is passed, consistency level, and then this header and counter required when using search. This we are not using. Are we using the correct endpoint? Version 1.0 groups. Let's see if it works here. If I'm able to get it from here, that means I'm able to get it from there as well. So this works fine. And let's see what is the access token that it has given. Somewhere it should be present. Yeah. What are the permission? Yes, these permissions are done. Maybe it takes time. Okay, let's try again. Let's get a new access token and then try again. Oh, there it is. Since we changed the permission, we have to get the new access token. I think that's the problem that we were having. So here we have all the list of groups. And I think even the mailbox should work now. So let's say flash messages. And let me change the access token here as well. And there we have some data. So yeah, so here I have all the email content available here in this request. All right, so we are up the time. Yeah, any questions? Anybody's? Okay, if nothing else, we can close. Thanks, everyone.